Welcome back to ABC English Story, where every story holds a lesson and every lesson helps us grow. Sometimes the most important connections in our lives come from the most unexpected places. They don't announce themselves with a loud noise. Instead, they arrive quietly, like the first light of morning after a long night. Today, we're sharing a story about two people who lived in different worlds, separated by age and experience. But a simple accident, a moment of chance, would build a bridge between them. This is the story of Arthur and Maya and the unlikely friendship that changed everything. On the quietest street in a busy town, there was a house that seemed to be holding its breath. It was an old house with faded blue paint and a garden that was more wild than planned. Inside this house lived Arthur. He was an old man, and to his neighbors, he was a mystery. They only saw him in his garden, a tall, silent figure moving slowly among the roses and overgrown weeds. He seemed to prefer the company of his memories to the company of people. Arthur's world was a universe of quiet routine. He woke with the sun. He drank his black coffee from the same chipped mug every morning. He spent his days in a dusty room at the back of the house, a room filled with canvases. Some were covered in beautiful paintings of faces and landscapes. Others were blank, white, and waiting. Arthur was a painter, but he hadn't truly painted in years. He just cleaned his brushes and looked at the empty canvases, as if waiting for an inspiration that he believed was gone forever. His life was a conversation with ghosts, with the echoes of a past that felt more real than his present. He was not unhappy, but he was profoundly alone, living inside the walls of his own history. Just a few blocks away, in a new, modern apartment building, lived Maya. Her world was the opposite of Arthur's. It was a world of bright screens, fast internet, and the constant hum of technology. She was a young software developer, brilliant and ambitious. Her life was filled with code, project deadlines, and virtual meetings. She was successful. She was independent. But in her clean, minimalist apartment, surrounded by the latest gadgets, Maya also felt a deep sense of loneliness. She had moved to the town for her job 6 months ago, leaving her family and friends behind. She knew hundreds of people online, but she knew no one here. Her evenings were often spent scrolling through photos of other people's happy lives, feeling like a spectator. She had built a successful career, but she hadn't built a life. She was surrounded by connection, but she felt completely disconnected. She was a ship with a powerful engine, but no harbor to call home. Their two separate worlds, one lost in the past and one lost in the future, were about to collide. The catalyst was not some dramatic event. It was small, modern, and a little bit clumsy. One sunny Saturday afternoon, Maya was trying to fly her new drone. She wanted to capture an aerial view of her new town. She was still learning how to control it, and as she directed it higher, a sudden gust of wind caught the small machine. It spun out of control. Maya watched, helpless, as it flew over the rooftops and then disappeared with a faint crash. Using the drone's GPS, she tracked it to a location she had never noticed before: the old house with the wild garden. She walked down the quiet street and stood before a weathered wooden gate. Taking a deep breath, she knocked. The door opened slowly, and Arthur stood there. He looked just as his neighbors described him: tall, silent, with eyes that seemed to look through you. "Excuse me," Maya began, her voice uncertain. I think my drone might have crashed in your backyard." Arthur just looked at her for a long moment. He didn't seem angry, just tired. He gave a small nod and led her through the house. The inside was dark and smelled of old paper and turpentine. When they stepped into the backyard, Maya saw her small white drone lying broken near a beautiful, overgrown rose bush. "I'm so sorry," she said, her cheeks red with embarrassment. Arthur didn't say anything at first. He just looked at the broken drone, then at the roses. "It's just a thing," he finally said, his voice raspy from disuse. "The roses will be fine." That could have been the end of their story. Maya could have taken her broken drone and left, and Arthur could have returned to his silent house. But as Maya bent down to pick up the pieces, she noticed a small wooden bench under a large oak tree. On it was a worn leather book, an old sketchbook. Curiosity got the better of her. "Are you an artist?" she asked gently. For the first time, a different light appeared in Arthur's eyes. It wasn't suspicion or tiredness. It was a flicker of something else, something long forgotten. He nodded again, almost shyly. "I used to be," he said. That small question opened a door, a tiny crack in the wall he had built around himself. Maya didn't leave right away. She stayed and asked about his garden. He told her the names of the flowers and which ones his late wife, Eleanor, had planted. He spoke of her with a quiet sadness that was also full of love. It was clear that this garden was not just a collection of plants. It was a living memory. Maya found herself returning. The next weekend, she brought a small box of pastries. She offered to help him with his computer, which was old and slow. He, in turn, hesitantly invited her into his studio. He showed her his paintings. They were beautiful, full of emotion and life. He told her the stories behind them, a portrait of Eleanor, a landscape from a trip they took long ago. Maya saw that Arthur was not a grumpy recluse. He was a man who was guarding a treasure of memories, afraid that the modern world would have no place for them. Arthur saw that Maya was not just a distracted young person obsessed with technology. She was a bright, kind soul searching for real connection in a world of digital noise. They started a simple routine. Every Saturday, Maya would visit. She would help him with small tasks, organizing his digital photos, setting up an online grocery account. He would make her tea, and they would sit in the garden or the studio and just talk. They talked about everything and nothing. He taught her about patience, about how a good painting, like a good life, takes time. She taught him about the world outside his garden gate, about new ideas and new possibilities. She learned from his quiet strength, his devotion to his art, and his love for Eleanor. His stories gave her a sense of roots, a connection to a past she had never known. He learned from her energy and her optimism. She was like a fresh breeze blowing through the dusty rooms of his house and his heart. One day, Maya came to his house with an idea. She had been inspired by his art and their conversations. "Arthur," she said, "I want to start a local project, a free coding class for kids at the community center. But I want to combine it with art. I want to teach them that technology and creativity can work together." Arthur looked at her, and for the first time in a very long time, he smiled. A true, warm smile that reached his eyes. "That," he said, "is a wonderful idea, Maya." And then he did something he hadn't done in a decade. He walked over to a blank canvas, picked up a brush, and began to paint. He painted Maya sitting in his garden with the afternoon sun in her hair. He wasn't just copying an image. He was painting her spirit, her kindness, her strength, her quiet hope. The friendship transformed them both. Maya launched her project, Code and Canvas. It became a huge success, bringing together young people and teaching them a new language of creativity. She found her purpose, her community, her harbor. She was no longer lonely. Arthur, empowered by Maya's belief in him, finally finished the painting. Then he started another and another. He joined a local art club and began to share his work with the world again. His house was no longer a silent museum of the past. It became a place of creation, a place of life. He was no longer just the gardener of his memories. He was planting new seeds for the future. Their friendship didn't solve all their problems. Life was still life, but it gave them a priceless gift, the knowledge that they were not alone. Their bond was a quiet, steady anchor in the changing tides of their lives. It showed them that the most meaningful connections are not about having things in common. They are about seeing beyond the surface, beyond age, beyond lifestyle, and recognizing the shared human heart that beats within us all. So, what can we learn from Arthur and Maya? Their story reminds us to look beyond our first impressions. The quiet neighbor, the young person on their phone, the person who seems so different from you, they all have a story. They all have a world inside them. So often, we build walls to protect ourselves, just like Arthur did, or we get lost in the noise of the modern world, just like Maya did. But what happens if we take a small risk? What if we knock on a gate, ask a simple question, or share a cup of tea? We might discover that the people we think are the most different from us are the very ones who hold the lessons we need to learn. They can help us see ourselves and the world in a new and beautiful light. Think about your own life. Is there an unlikely friendship waiting for you? Is there a wall you can help someone break down, or a wall of your own that you can let crumble just a little? True connection is one of life's greatest treasures. It gives us strength, it inspires growth, and it reminds us that we are all part of the same human story. Thank you for joining us today at ABC English Story. If this story inspired you, give us a like, share it with a friend who might need to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe to ABC English Story for more meaningful content like this. Until next time, stay curious, stay open, and keep learning.